Hi there, I hope everyone's been having a great week. Today I'm going to talk about my writing journey up until this point. I know I talked a little bit about my goals already, which you can see in my quarterly goals video. I'll link that in the description down below. But I haven't actually talked a lot about what I did to get up to this point, so I figured that'd be a good topic for today. So like I mentioned before, sometime in middle school I started writing fan fiction. I'm going to say 7th grade, maybe 2012. This was the first time that I'd ever written anything like that, anything that wasn't just for school. I'd always liked to read a lot, but I'd never done any writing myself. So that continued all the way up throughout high school. And then sometime in junior year is when I first got an idea for a story myself. It was still kind of with the same characters, but they had become so out of character and far removed at this point that it really was its own story. And that idea actually isn't what I'm writing now. That got scrapped. It's the same. One element stayed consistent from the book I'm writing now, from that story, which I won't say because it'll spoil the entire story, but one thing stayed consistent, but I scrapped the whole idea just because it was focused a lot around romance, and I don't like romance, so I was like, that's probably a bad idea for me to write that. So this is the middle of junior year. I started writing a scene that happens in the middle of the story in a notebook with a whole new cast of characters. I started writing with someone for about 2 months and then stopped that. I don't think anything they wrote is even in the book anymore. We'd written kind of an outline, and that's mostly what I went off of for the rest of junior year and then the rest of senior year as well. So at the end of senior year, I also made my first official outline. That's actually why this wall is covered. I have all the index cards with my story and characters on this wall. And at some point I realized two things. One, that I hated the ending that we'd come up with and I changed it completely. And also that this was better off being one book than 2 books. I had planned on making this into 2 books, but I didn't have enough. By the time I got to the second book, it was better off just adding it on to the end, and that worked out a lot better. So after I graduated, I continued to write during my year off, and by the end of 2017, I had my first full draft, which was very exciting. I'm not really sure what I did in between the end of 2017 and spring of 2018. I must have been editing or something like that. But in spring, I got my first beta reader. I'm going to call this beta round 0 just because it was just one person. We exchanged stories, and I read over hers while she edited mine, and that was my first set of feedback. With those new notes, I continued to edit and rewrite throughout the next... With those new notes, I continued to edit and rewrite. It was very slow going because I just started college that fall, so there's no way I was that focused on it. But during the break is when I finally sat down and I really went over her edits. And by the beginning of January, I had a book that I was really, really happy with. That was my first time I thought my manuscript was where I wanted it to be. I must have been very motivated at the beginning of that year as well, because I wrote a 10,000 word novella for the backstory of those characters. I think by January 5th I had finished that. At the end of January I got my first full group of beta readers, and I started out with about 7 or 9 people, and I ended up with about 4 usable sets of feedback. After that, that's probably the longest I took to edit. I didn't touch any of that feedback until December, and in January of 2020 I had my 3rd edit, the one I've just completed, and I've now started beta round 2. So that's about where I am right now. I hope you'll stick with me throughout this journey up until publication, which I am aiming for the end of this year, hopefully by early next year at the latest. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you're interested in more videos from this channel, as well as the bell so you get notifications when I post. And let me know in the comments what your writing journey has looked like. Has it been smooth sailing, or have you had as many bumps as I have, taking 4 years just to draft one novel?